teenagers, he said. This totally changed my perception of Jesus. I thought Jesus was an old guy. I was only 20 at the time, and that his disciples were old guys. But when I realized that John could have been in his late teens, and several of the other disciples could have been in their late teens or early 20s, I was amazed. I was working with students the same age. Maybe I could learn to lead my youth group by exploring how Jesus worked with his youth group. After class, I rushed up to my professor and asked how I could learn more. He encouraged me to study the life of Christ chronologically. Dr. Gundry had just compiled a harmony of the Gospels, which looks at Christ's life chronologically, and he encouraged me to get a copy. Study what Jesus did the first year, he advised. Where did he go? What did he say? Why did he do the things he did? Then do the same with the second year and the third year. He encouraged me, in short, to study the Son's life. This sent me on a journey that became my life passion. We named our youth group Son Life. We were just trying to live out the Son's life. For 25 years, I led a ministry called Son Life, through which we trained countless numbers of youth pastors and pastors in the Son's life. Over the years, I've discovered that Jesus modeled a very simple pattern for disciple-making, a pattern every Christian can easily imitate. Jesus' disciple-making strategy follows 4 challenges he posed to his followers. Come and see, John chapter 1, verse 39. Follow me, John chapter 1, verse 43. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men, Matthew chapter 4, verse 19. And go and bear fruit, John chapter 15, verse 16. With this simple pattern, Jesus led his disciples through the natural growth process from children to young men and to spiritual fathers. This book is dedicated to explaining this simple process. In Chapter 4, we will introduce 4 chairs as a simple metaphor to explain this disciple-making process. These 4 chairs will reflect the 4 challenges of Jesus, a simple transferable metaphor of how Jesus developed fully trained disciples. Luke chapter 6, verse 40. The message of Jesus. Unfortunately, it took me many years to discern this very simple pattern. For the first 10 years I studied the life of Christ, I focused mainly upon his message, the words of Jesus. 20% of the words in the New Testament are the words of Jesus. 1 in every 4 verses in the New Testament is quoting the sayings of Jesus. That's a lot of material. Jesus' message is profound. He spoke in simple terms. He spoke, for example, of the lilies of the field, the birds of the air, and the sowers and the seed. But his simple words carried profound weight. People were amazed at Jesus' words, for he taught them as one who had authority, unlike the other teachers of the law. Mark chapter 1, verse 22. But I would argue that if you completely understand the message of Christ, but fail to understand his methods, you won't truly know the Jesus of the Scriptures. Jesus was much more than just his words and message. The methods of Jesus. For the next 10 years of my Christian life, I focused on the methods of Jesus. I studied to identify his major priorities and analyze them in his life and ministry. I wrote a Harmony self-study, which explained what I consider the strategy of Jesus. We trained tens of thousands of youth pastors, and church leaders in the methods of Christ. Some of those methods included: Jesus was deeply committed to relational ministry. John chapter 3 verse 22 tells us that spent time with his disciples. The Greek word translated spent time with here is diatribo. It means getting under the skin of. Jesus gave his disciples time to get to know him and took time to invest in them. Jesus invested early in a few. Within 18 months of beginning his ministry, Jesus identified 5 individuals, James and John, Simon and Andrew, and Matthew, and challenged them to go deeper with him. Even before he chose his 12 disciples, Jesus deepened his investment in these few, teaching them how to be fishers of men.